Okay, good morning. My name is Chuck Martinek. I work for LMC Insurance, and today we're going to have a webinar entitled Essentials of Crisis Management. And I just want to let everybody know that the first thing, as far as expectations are concerned, this is kind of an entry-level discussion about crisis management. We really can have probably a 3-4 day meeting about how to actually establish a quality crisis management plan. But the intention of this is to give you some information and some ideas as to what we need to do to help protect our companies in the event that we have a crisis. And I can tell you that going through this back in 1993, during the 93 flood, when I was back working for Principal Financial Group, crisis management, emergency planning, business resumption, all of those entities are things that we really need to give some serious consideration to. And I can honestly tell you this, that the hardest part of this is that 90% of crisis management is done before the crisis actually occurs. So preparing yourselves for a crisis and getting your tools in place, if you will, is a very valuable thing for all of us to do. So we're going to talk about those things. We'll get into some specifics on certain elements of crisis management, and hopefully that you'll be able to get some information out of that. One thing that I do want to, and we'll share this later in the presentation, we do have a website. LMC and ABIS came together and we created, if you will, a crisis management guide, and that is located on our www.lmcins.com website. And if you go to the risk management tab, and we'll pull that up a little bit later and let you see it, but if you go to the risk management tab, you'll see a crisis management piece on the left-hand side that will have many of the items that we're talking about here today. So that is available to you, and again, we will pull that up as we go forward. So with that, we'll get started with the nuts and bolts of this presentation, and we'll get to moving along here. Okay, as the introduction to this, there's no way for us to plan a crisis. Okay, I mean, when we have the fire, when we have the tornado, the flood, workplace violence, when we have data breach, security issues, I mean, it's not that we've planned those events. They happen immediately, and we have to respond very quickly. And the biggest thing that I find sometimes is when companies have crises, regardless of what type of crises they are, they're not prepared for those. They really don't know. Many times we get calls, which we're welcome to take, and we're welcome to help you work through those things. But the fact is that they don't really know where to start, and they have no ground zero, and they have no place to really build this program. So we need to think about, your organizations need to think about the catastrophes and the crises that potentially could happen within your organizations, and how are you going to deal with those. It is very important to have that plan put into place from a cost containment standpoint, survivability of your company. It's very important. Plus also from a public perception and how you respond to these crises, ironically enough, is extremely important. Keep in mind, media is everywhere. 30 years ago, nobody had cell phones. 20 years ago, nobody had cell phones. Everybody's got video. Everybody can take pictures. Everybody can tweet, send email out, Facebook, all kinds of things. We have to know how to manage those situations, because when we have a crisis, I guarantee that you're going to have data going out to the general public that maybe you don't want. So how we control all that stuff is very important, and we'll talk some of the nuts and bolts on how to do that as we move forward. Basically, our key objectives here today is, we want to identify why do we really need a risk or a crisis management plan. We're going to talk about creating a crisis management team. In my opinion, this is the ground zero. This is the piece that we really need to think about. If we do not have this put together in writing, formalized, with a backup plan, we're behind the 8 ball a little bit. We need to put one of those together. Try to talk a little bit about anticipating types of crises that can impact your company, and we'll go over some key items that we need to consider in evaluating your crisis management plan and how you actually implement that plan. So with that, we're going to move forward, and and try to get some information along the lines for those objectives. Why do we really need a crisis management plan? Nobody believes that they need a crisis management plan until the crisis happens. I was part of a Fortune 500 company, Principal Financial Group, and I worked in a department where we were part of the crisis management. We're actually part of the emergency planning, crisis management, and business resumption teams. And prior to the 1993 flood, we had difficulty in getting anybody to listen to us about what could potentially happen. Right after the 1993 flood, we became, lack of a better term, the superstars of that program a little bit, because everybody wanted information. They realized that, hey, it can happen to us. A crisis has a number of potential exposures to your organization. It threatens the viability of your organization, places your organization in financial jeopardy, will impact the livelihood of your employees. I mean, and when you think about, if you lose your building, if you lose the ability to resume your business, we have folks that are out of work, maybe temporarily. We may be able to bring them back sooner or later, but the fact is you lose good employees because they're not going to wait around. They're going to go out and find other jobs. It also creates a negative publicity impacting your public trust. When you can't function, or if you have bad publicity, bad press going out about your company because of the way we handle the crisis, those are things that impacts your company, and many times it's a long-term effect. So a couple of really good reasons. There's a number of reasons why a crisis management plan is important, but most important, but these are some highlights that I think you ought to think about. And here's a question that I wanted to pose out. I kind of threw this in at the last moment here, but I got to thinking about this before we presented, and I want you to give this some consideration. Today at 11 o'clock, your company loses its building. Either we have a power failure, a fire, computer system, your computer system goes out, there's a fatality due to the fire. This all happens at 11 o'clock today. Now think about that for a second. What would you do? I mean, how would you get around that? You've lost your building, you have a fatality, you have family members and people you need to deal with in regards to that. You have no computer system right now where you can contact customers. How do you deal with that? Could you pay your employees? Could you serve your customers? How would your company survive? And these are things to think about. We have a lot of ag business in our industry and through our agency, and one of those guys, one of those locations has a big grain elevator explosion. It impacts them in many, many different ways. So being able to navigate through that crisis with somewhat of a plan that will allow us to be successful as best that we can, to bring our company back to full service, to get our employees back to work, to hold good public forum, those are very important things. All right, we're going to talk about a couple different phases in emergency planning and crisis management. And again, I want to reemphasize something. Crisis management is the middle ground. That's the actual crisis piece. But there needs to be an emergency planning piece as well. There are three really big, distinct pieces to this: emergency planning, crisis management, actually handling the crisis, and the final one is business resumption. We're not going to get into business resumption too much today. That's a very detailed and complicated topic, but I don't feel like I can really address crisis management unless I really talk a little bit about the emergency planning piece, because that's really where I think we need to be at as far as planning out how are we going to handle the emergency. So if you would, and if you're taking notes, and this is going to be available to you too as well if you don't want to take notes, but think of it in terms of three phases: emergency planning, crisis management, and then the final piece is business resumption. So if you think about it in that way, how you're going to go about doing this, I think it helps us a little bit to keep those items clear and moving forward. Number one thing that I think we need to think about, if you do not have this, consider creating a crisis management team. These are the key players that you're going to have within your organization that are going to help you navigate through your crisis management plan. Now, there's a number of people that can be on this. They're key employees, people who have a distinct skill set. Maybe your IT department definitely has to be on there because there's going to be computer issues associated with some of the crises that we have to deal with. But people that I have often saw and think need to be on there, your CEO, your CFO, those types of folks, safety and compliance manager, anybody who's in regard, who has any kind of responsibility as far as your safety and security programs should be on that crisis management team. Your human resource director is an excellent person to have on that crisis management team. Any kind of legal counsel that we have, operations manager, and other people, like I said, with specialty skills like your IT folks, claims management people might need to be on there. If you have those folks available. And depending on your operation, this list may change, but it has to be people that are critical to your operation in dealing with that crisis. You can also bring outside folks in there to help us. You know, your insurance carriers, your insurance broker like ourselves, we can easily come in there and help provide assistance on those type of things. But the core folks that you really need to have are from your organization that are able to make key decisions and have good quality knowledge about the exposures that you're facing and the types of tasks that you're undergoing when you're dealing with this type of crisis. Now, as we talk about this a little bit, here's the key. These folks that are on that crisis management team, as you create your crisis management plan, you have these people identified with their phone numbers, emergency contact information, so on and so forth. What you got to realize is that when we have a crisis, it doesn't happen between 8 and 5. Sometimes it happens at 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, or it happens when your human resources director is on vacation or your operation manager is gone for the day for whatever reason. So you got to have backup plans there, okay? What happens if your HR person or your CEO or your safety and compliance officer is not there? Who can fill in on that job? And it's very important to have that backup plan. Second thing, when that accident or when that crisis happens, that catastrophe happens, we may not be able to get to our location. Okay, so each of these people should have a copy of your crisis management and your emergency plan available to them at any time via online, where they can use a computer, a remote computer. Maybe they can have a copy of that on their cell phone, their iPhone, or even a hard copy located in their home where they can actually get access to it. Understand that sometimes the crisis that we have may impact our entire company to where we don't have any of the resources that we typically are used to. You want to make certain that you have those plans available to these people. These people are going to be responsible for contacting each other, contacting key employees that they feel they need to have available for the assistance of that crisis management plan. These are key individuals. Okay, so you want to have that crisis management team in place with backups and with their contact information, so that no matter where the incident occurs, no matter where the crisis occurs, that we can get access to this group of people and access to our crisis management plan. The time to think about these people, or think about who's going to be on this team, is not in the middle of the crisis. It will take you too long. It will cause extra headache, and when you're trying to figure it out. And sometimes these people aren't going to be available. Again, so you got to have the backup, and you got to have this put into place, hopefully long before a crisis would ever occur. That crisis management team and your organization, there's things that I would strongly advise you to do. Now, because this is a webinar and I've got maybe an hour to talk about this stuff, I can't go through every one of these things. But what I really encourage you to do with your organizations is sit down with that group. Once you establish that crisis management team and your key employees as to who needs to be on that team, I strongly advise you to take a look at and determine what types of crises are you exposed to. Employee injury, serious injury, fatality, and yeah, that's a crisis. A lot of people don't think that employee accidents are a crisis, but it's a serious accident where OSHA can maybe get involved. It is a crisis. theft. We lost, somebody embezzled $100,000 worth of money. We've had that happen with some of our clients. Data breach, where we have somebody infiltrate our computer system and we make it non-functionable for us. Things like property damage, flood, fire, tornado. What are our exposures? If you're in a floodplain and you're a manufacturer, where are you going to go if you don't? If all of a sudden you're under 4 feet of water? Here in the state of Iowa, we've had that happen a number of times. Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, all along the Mississippi River. Des Moines, of course, has had it a number of different times. We need to be ready for those type of things. The one more common type of crisis that you may have is an OSHA inspection. And I do classify that as a crisis. Some people would think, well, is it really that serious? Well, it's serious if you're not ready for it. What are you going to do if OSHA shows up at your door today and says, hey, I'm coming through? You got to have a plan as to how you're going to be able to deal with that. Power loss, strike. We have some companies that deal with this. Companies, their employees go on strike. How are you going to deal? That's a crisis. How are we going to deal with it? Business anything that would result in business interruption, civil unrest. Folks down in Missouri, when they had their civil unrest, companies couldn't show up to work. Those type of things. National security issues. Had the unfortunate incident over there in France. Imagine if that would have happened in New York. Imagine the crisis management plans that were put into place in 9/11. We are susceptible to all of those type of things. Things like chemical release. If you're in the ag industry, or maybe you're not in the ag industry, and one of your neighbors has a chemical release where you're in the plume of anhydrous and you have to get out of the building. International exposure. Many of our companies actually have folks that travel internationally for business. And what are we going to do if there's a political coup when they're over there? How are we going to get them back? What are we going to do? How are we going to be able to navigate through those type of things? And this is just a small list of the things that we need to think about from our company's standpoint as far as what our exposures are. So that's one of the elements that crisis management team and your organization can do in order to help identify exposures that you have and put plans and processes into place that if those exposures occur, here's your action. Now, I'm the first to tell you, going through a number of these types of crises through with floods and other things that we've had with fatalities with some of our clients and OSHA inspections and all the stuff that goes along with it. But you can put a plan together, and it's good to have that plan. That plan will be adjusted as you use it, as you go through it. You're going to have to adjust things on the fly, but to have these core elements put into place, it will help navigate you through that crisis. Other things you might want to think about in your emergency plan. A very important piece, create an emergency contact list. These are the folks that you have to be able to contact at a moment's notice to be able to notify your customers, your employees immediately. And you don't want to have to stand there and try to figure out, how do I get a hold of these people during a crisis? Have that stuff written out. Have it in multiple locations so that if you lose your main location, you have it somewhere else. Some people that would be on the contact list, if you have an exposure to pollution, EPA, OSHA, the DNR, okay? Those are all folks that you should have some contact with and have emergency numbers for. Your local media. One of the best things that you can do is if you have a catastrophe, the media is going to come out there. You're going to want to be able to contact them and get in front of that a little bit before bad information gets out. Key employees. Perfect example is the Joplin, Missouri tornado. We had that hospital. We actually had an opportunity to talk to the folks down there. And one of the things that they said was vital in them being able to open up their triage and even though their hospital took a direct hit, open up their triage and serve injured people from that tornado, was they were able to contact their key employees. They had a means of being able to do that through a cell phone service that allowed them to be able to get that and get those folks into place if they were able to. Key customers. in the end, you want to serve your customers, and you got to know how to be able to, if you have a catastrophe or a crisis to where there's going to be an impact on how you service those customers, you want to let them know in good faith. The other thing is your suppliers and vendors. Keep that contact list available with them as well, because you may, if you've got multiple locations and one of your main locations goes down, you may have to pick up and ramp up your production in other locations to accommodate your customers' needs. So you're going to have to get your vendors who are supplying your supplies to start delivering materials to other locations so that you can keep with your supply and demand needs. Of course, your insurance carrier and broker. Anytime that you have a crisis like that, let us know. We'll help you navigate through it, but it also helps with the claims process in terms of being able to navigate through those type of things. And any kind of third-party consultants. There are specialists out there in pollution. There's specialists out there in property damage, fire specialists, those type of things. Have those folks available that you can call in on them. Another item that I've got on here, and sometimes you need to think about this a little bit. Sometimes we have employees who retire, who are no longer working, but they are key, knowledgeable people. Get their approval, of course, but if you need to use some of those folks, sometimes they're more than willing to come in. So you want to keep those folks available if you do need them. So having that good contact list is a vital element to a crisis management plan. Now, the other piece of this, and we don't think about this enough, is identifying a command center. All right. Now, there's got to be a location where everybody can meet, where your employees can meet to get information, maybe where if you're in a small town, where your community can meet to get information about the catastrophe that's happening, if it's significant enough to warrant it. Keep in mind that we may not be able to meet at our own location. If we lost it in a flood, or we lost it in a tornado or a fire, we have to have a means of being able to meet someplace so that we can start getting our business back in play. We can start managing the media a little bit, and we can have a means of communicating and a place where that crisis management team can meet. So you want to think about establishing a command center that is one on your site, and then have a second one off your site. Now keep in mind that you may have to consider locations away from your immediate area. If that disaster affected your entire community, you may not have a place to meet for 30 miles. So you've got to be able to look outside a little bit to find out where could you meet in the event that we lose the ability to meet at our own location. If you choose another location, if you meet off-site, key items are communication systems, phones, computers. How can you be able to utilize the communication systems that they have available there to your benefit? And those are important things. Keep in mind, and I've dealt with this enough to know that you're going to want to maintain your business. You're going to want to try to keep your business moving as best that you can. And you're going to have to do that and have the capability of doing that at a remote location. So whatever tools you need to be able to do that, that's what you're going to want to look for in a remote location. I will tell you this, do not wait until the crisis to try to figure out where you're going to meet off-site, if in fact you have to meet off-site. Have 1, 2, 3 places, backup places to where you could meet. Contact those locations, say, hey, we got a crisis management team, we have a crisis management plan. If there's some reason that we ever lose the ability to do function out of our own location due to a crisis, we'd like to be able to use the town hall, the library room, maybe somebody's home, one of your employees' homes, whatever the case may be. But you want to have that identified now, because when the crisis happens, everybody that is in the same boat that you're in is going to be looking for a place as well. You want to try to get that squared away as best that you possibly can. One of the things that you want to think about is that the media is the media, and they will be all over a major crisis. They'll be all over a fatality sometimes. They'll be all over a grain elevator explosion, a industrial fire, they'll be all over everything, okay? And they are going to be able to get information out quickly, and sometimes stuff that you don't want. The second piece of this is this. Every one of your employees has a cell phone. Everybody out there has video. They all can take pictures. You want to make certain that you can go out and control that. It is very important for you to identify that only designated individuals may speak with the media or represent the company to any public audience. This includes sharing of any information via photographs, videos, tweets, or any other social media. Unless designated in advance, all media inquiries will be handled by whoever you want it to be. And this is basically, I'm reading what is a corporate media policy. This should be in your handbook. This should be in a place where everybody knows it. And I would encourage you to make certain that when you talk to your employees, well in advance of any crisis, that you let them know that you're not to take pictures, photos, tweets, do any Facebooking about the company in the event of these crises, that you need to control all of that. Because what happens many times is that, and I'm just going to give you a real life scenario, is we had a terrible accident a while back, and we had a fatality. And what happened was that many of the employees that were on this crew were making statements on Facebook and Twitter about the unsafe behavior this potential employee, this particular employee had, and sometimes alluded to maybe unsafe work conditions, much of which was not true, really. It was just a matter of people who had emotions going, and they started to throw that out. Well, what ended up happening was we had some claims people get a hold of that, some insurance people get a hold of that Facebook data, and we had to defend against those statements. So it's very important, to the best of your ability, to be able to control some of those things. Talking to the media, the actual media, is a whole nother can of worms. Again, you want one company spokesman to do the talking to the media. Not everybody, one person. And they should be very good at speaking in non-direct terms and in ways that will help ease the situation. You don't want to give too much information. You don't want to lie at all, because that'll be trouble for you. But you want to be able to go in there and have good statements and not offer a whole heck of a lot. I'm going to open up the website here in a second, and I'm going to let you take a look at some of the information that we have. And one of the things that we have on this crisis management team, hopefully you can see this screen. This is on our LMC, www.lmcins.com website under the Risk Management tab. If you click on Crisis Management, what you will have is the full Crisis Management Guide and a number of appendix along with those, with some helpful points on how to deal with certain things. One of the things that we have on here is media do's and don'ts, okay? Opening that up, hopefully quicker than what it's actually doing. Naturally, it takes forever. It was working perfectly moments ago. Okay, here we go. All right, this appendix talks about the media do's and don'ts, and I want to share some of the things with you. One of the things that it talks about, no comment. First of all, no comment is not something you should say. Talking a little is better than saying nothing. Explaining why you can't talk is better than stonewalling somebody. So basically, if you get media out there and you have no information, have a prepared statement that states that, hey, we're very concerned about our employee safety. We're trying to do some things. We're getting some new information, and we will get back to you as quickly as possible. Respond to their requests as quickly as you possibly can. I can't read all of these because just from time constraints, but there is a number of different great statements here that you can make and talk about and helpful hints in dealing with the media. Again, one of the things is do take control. If there is bad news, release it yourself before a reporter digs it up and tells the world. And now, of course, play this in mind depending on the seriousness of a crisis. If it's a crisis where you know media is going to be informed, get that statement prepared on what you're going to do. And it's often a good time to have some prepared statements with everybody. And again, make sure that you're only using one person. Do not ever say anything off the record, all right? And again, don't say no comment. Now, there's a number of things on this do's and don'ts list, and I would encourage you to go into that website if you can and take a look at what they've got available, because the stuff on here is very good. It helps you kind of navigate through all this process, and it provides some good information for you. So dealing with that media is very important. Again, just to summarize, one single person is going to talk to the media. 2, make certain that your employees know that Facebook, Twitter, try to control that as best that you can. When you have that crisis, have something in your employee statement that states that when we have a crisis, the employees are not to talk about your corporation through Facebook, Twitter, whatever the case may be. All right, you want to be able to control that. Also, make certain that your employees that they do not talk to a reporter, that if they are approached by a reporter, they direct that reporter to your company spokesperson. I know it's difficult to manage sometimes, but those are things that you want to try to navigate through. Preparing a holding statement. Now, what is a holding statement is when you don't have a lot of information, but you need to respond to a reporter, or you need to respond publicly as to what is going on. What I have put down here is basically a sample holding statement for you. Now you can adjust it, do whatever you want, but it kind of gives you the idea on what you can do. Now you can either do this via electronically or speak the words however you want, but basically what it says is the highest priority is the safety of those who have been impacted by this incident. We're working quickly to ensure that our employees and our neighbors are out of harm's way. We will provide an update to the media and through social media such as Facebook and Twitter once we've had time to fully assess the situation. Now, I'm mentioning Facebook and Twitter here. That's corporate Facebook, corporate Twitter. That's not your employees' Facebook and Twitter. We're not allowing them to do that. This is the corporate Facebook, corporate Twitter accounts that you can respond in those type of ways. So having something like that quickly that you can use and have it prepared before is a vital thing, because when the crisis happens, sometimes you feel like you're playing dodgeball and you got all these things coming at you and you don't have time to really sit down and think it through when it's happening, and it's tough to do to be able to navigate through that stuff. So having these things somewhat prepared is an excellent way to be able to navigate through that process. Okay. Phase 2, managing a crisis. What we learned basically is that we can have a crisis of any kind of magnitude, and it can be a natural disaster, fatality, regulatory, OSHA guy showing up, fire, explosion, data breach, whatever the case may be. Those are just a small sampling of those. But one of the things that happens when we have this, you got to understand that many times we have people who are injured or killed. Many times we have serious crisis that impacts our emotional ability for good judgment. Okay, having the day of crisis tips sheet in front of you to be able to navigate through those crises is paramount. Okay, not everybody handles a crisis the same way. Some people freak out, some people panic, other people are very calm, cool, and collective, and they can deal with it very, very well. But you got to have a process as to how you're going to be able to do that. And so what I want to share with you is, hopefully it won't take as long to load this time, but I want to share with you some information on this crisis tips. Now, keep in mind, every crisis is different. Okay, you're going to handle a fire and explosion different than you would a data breach, but this will give you a good idea as to how to navigate through some of those types of things. Hopefully you can you see my screen. Day of the crisis tips, Appendix A. And again, this is available through our website. You can go in, you can download it, you can play with it all you want. And again, it's taken 16 hours for this to load. I apologize about the time here, but we must have a lot of people on the computer right now because, okay, here we go. Day of the crisis tips, and this is a very easy one-page document that you can take a look at. And it really is a helpful piece. It's not entirely complicated. It's just things for us to remember. Okay, obviously communicating the emergency with emergency responders and regulators, OSHA, EPA, 911, whoever we need to call there. Ensuring that all our employees and visitors are accounted for. This is huge. We have visitors in our company. We have people who show up. We have family members sometimes that are in our company. Make certain that those folks are accounted for. Have a sign-up sheet at the front of your desk. Anybody that walks into your facility must sign in so that we know that you're in our building. I always like to have a central meeting place. If you have a fire or a catastrophe or some sort and you can't be at the building, identify some central meeting place. Maybe it's your command center, maybe it's some place that's close to your site, but where your employees can go and gather so that you can take a head count. Very important is securing the incident scene. Okay, restrict visitor access. Don't allow people to get in there. Lock your gates if possible, as long as you got emergency rescue coming in and all those type of things. But control that area. Gawkers are a huge problem, and gawkers also have cell phones. So what happens is, and this is a very big issue, if you have a major catastrophe where everybody wants to run to, okay, and take a look at, they want to watch your building burn down, you're going to have to control that. You're going to have people trying to get in and take a look at some things and take pictures. Now, they're going to be able to do that. You can't stop all of it. But the simple fact is this. You want to be able to at least control their access a little bit to the site. Very, very important if you have a serious accident or a fatality. You don't want people walking around the incident site because OSHA does need to go out and look at that, and you don't want to be able to spoil any of those types of or contaminate that area. Again, identify your command center. We're identifying that spokesperson. Take a few minutes to formulate your message to your employees, to the news media, to families, okay? Again, key components here. Be sympathetic, stick to the facts. Do not speculate anything. Don't say, I think this may have happened. That is not, we either know or we don't. We don't speculate on any of this stuff when it comes to talking to the media. And again, reinforce your company beliefs about safety and the well-being of your neighborhoods and your employees. At the first available opportunity, meet with your employees if we need to. Explain what happened. Again, don't speculate. Stick to the facts and talk to them and reemphasize that employee media policy. No pictures, no videos, no tweeting, no Facebook. All right, keep that going all through your company spokesman. And again, this is a very, very good piece to have when we're dealing with that. If you haven't been contacted and you feel the need to contact the media, go ahead. Now, I say that cautiously. Don't open a can of worms. But if you've got something that you know is going to happen, work with that media so that the message that is coming out is your message and not some reporter who is speculating or taking words from somebody else and turning it into something else, and we all know how that works. So make certain that you manage that the best you can. And then also, if you have a claim, report that claim as quickly as possible. Your insurance carrier has specialists that can assist you in navigating through that. LMC has specialists and experts that can help navigate through that. It's a very difficult piece. When you have a major catastrophe, a major crisis, the insurance claim piece is something that you may not want to be dealing with at that particular time. That's where we can assist you. Okay, so keep those things in mind as you move forward. Okay. Moving on here, security. Again, I kind of talked about this a little bit, but it's worth re-mentioning. You got to make certain that you secure your area. One of the things that happens in a small town, particularly if you've got a fire, where does everybody go? They want to watch it burn. Keep control of those areas. Identify area entry points where people can get into your facility. Or the general public could get into your facility or on your property, and try to protect those assets as best as you possibly can. Control the people coming in and out. It's very important to do so. There's going to be an issue. If, for example, like with a grain elevator, that building blows up, many of the folks that live in that town have family members that are over there. They're going to want to come in. They're going to be worried, sometimes hysterical. Some people may try to get into your facility to look for their loved one. It's very difficult. You got to be compassionate. You got to understand, but you got to make certain that you got to keep those folks out of there, because they can make matters worse for you. They can get injured themselves, and you just got to control that environment. Do not remove any debris unless it is part of a rescue or a treatment of casualties, and I mean that in the strictest sense of the word. There are patterns that insurance people use when they see debris and determine exactly what happened. OSHA uses sometimes debris in the material that's around to determine what happened. You don't want to taint the evidence, if you will. Of course, if you do have a rescue situation, that comes first. You remove everything you can. Protect your property or equipment, which may be susceptible to additional damage. If you got a fire and you've got other equipment, an equipment building located somewhat close, you don't want to put anybody in harm's way, but if you can get equipment out, you want to get equipment out. Again, you don't want to risk your life or anything like that, but you want to make certain that you're taking care of and you're protecting any equipment if you can. Do not put anybody in risk to do that. Again, if you're having an equipment building right next to your main manufacturing building and it's up in flames, stay away from it. You're going to lose your building probably. That's just the way it is. We have insurance for those things. But if there's ways to if it's far enough away to where you can get those things safely out of there, wind can shift, that kind of stuff, go ahead and get that out of there. But those are some situations that you got to think about from a crisis security standpoint. Other things that you want to make certain, very important, when that crisis happens, this is also part of your accident investigation plan. Get the names and statements of all the witnesses that you can. Try to get them as quickly as possible. Take as many pictures, corporately, take as many pictures as you possibly can of that incident or that catastrophe or crisis so that you can see exactly what's going on. If it's possible, record the make and model and serial number of any vehicle or machinery that was involved in that crisis. All right. If you have a vehicle list, which you should, and it should be updated, and you lost X number of pieces of equipment, have that available. Okay, that helps with the claims process. It's good for us to know to keep track of those type of things. If employees, very important, we forget sometimes, if employees were taken to the hospital or clinic to receive treatment, make certain that you know how they got there, whether it was ambulance or another employee drove them, and make certain that you know where they went. All right, family members are going to want to know. Sometimes those folks are injured enough to where they can't ask. Or they can't call on a cell phone or let them know. So make certain that you know. The one thing you don't want to say to a wife or a husband is your wife or her husband was injured. We have no idea where he went. Make certain that you know where that person is going. Other things to think about: cooperate with authorities, police, OSHA, whomever. Ask for their credentials. When you're talking to anybody who is of authority, like an OSHA enforcement officer of any kind, EPA, police officers, make certain that you ask for their credentials. During your conversations, do not admit fault on anything, okay? And just like if you have a car accident, don't admit fault for anything. Do not enter in any kind of discussions with who did what. all right? You give them the facts, and then you leave it alone. Don't let personal opinion get into the way. And do not discuss mechanical problems or defects with anybody. What I'm talking about there, if you have any kind of serious accident or injury or whatever, or a fire, don't make a comment about, hey, we knew the boiler was in bad shape, we just didn't think it was that bad of shape. I mean, you don't say those type of things. We let those folks figure that stuff out. We don't admit guilt. We don't point out where we were wrong or what we think happened. That's all speculation. And again, that information is available to the media sometimes. So if you say anything like that and it turns out to not be true, you can't put the bird back in the box. It's out, and that's the end of it. You're gonna have to deal with that, the repercussions from that. One of the things I do want to talk to you real quickly about is, one of the crises is OSHA. I deal with these folks a lot, and most of them are pretty good folks, and it's okay. It's not that big of a deal, but there is a process that you have to go through. And because I deal with OSHA a lot, it doesn't intimidate me nearly as much as it used to. But somebody who never really deals with them that much, or if they've ever dealt with them and they show up at your door, a panic sets in. I mean, what are they here for? What do they want to know? Those type of things. So again, planning this out before OSHA shows up. Part of that crisis management team is, what are you going to do when OSHA does show up? And the thing that you need to know, if you had a fatality, a newsworthy accident, or an inpatient hospitalization of one of your employees due to an incident, OSHA is going to come out. Okay, they're going to come out and inspect your facility. They're going to figure out what happened on that fatality or that inpatient hospitalization, or sometimes if it's a newsworthy accident, and I'll give you an example of this here in a second, they're going to come out. We had a hospital one time, had an employee who got overcome by ammonia, cleaning ammonia. They were a housekeeping employee. And they got sick from it because they had too much of it or whatever. I don't really know the details. They were in an enclosed area and they started breathing it and it burned their nose or whatever. They went to the doctor, and it was a small town, and the small town somehow thought that was newsworthy, and they put that an employee was overcome by fumes. And it was a small little town, and what happened was the state OSHA inspector somehow was going through all the news releases, and he's seen chemical exposure. The employee was overcome by ammonia, and what happened was that he came out and inspected the facility, not just for that incident, but for everything. Blackout, tagout, all the different OSHA required programs. So sometimes small towns are great, but sometimes because they only got a one-page newspaper, they got to fill it in, and if they find out about some of these things, it might be newsworthy to them. Keep in mind, OSHA looks at all that stuff. So if your incident or accident makes the news, OSHA probably will see it because they do search the web for that information. Other thing you might want to think about, organize your OSHA 300 logs. Have those up and ready to go. When OSHA arrives is not the time to do it. Have your training records in order, have that all done before, and prepare your employees and crisis management team for an OSHA inspection. Practice. What are you going to do if they do show up? Okay. Now, when OSHA does show up, the OSHA enforcement officer, number one thing, verify the identity of that inspector. Say that they should have a state identification with a photo and a serial number. Contact the OSHA office to verify that that is his OSHA number and that is the person. Now, it's your right to do that. The OSHA inspector will not get angry with you. It does one thing. It provides you time, okay, to get things in order. Because when the OSHA guy comes up, you get his credentials, you set him down in a room, and you turn around and you tell one of your employees, OSHA's here, and you let the word spread. And clean things up, get stuff in order, do whatever you got to do, but you let folks know. So you go out there and you go and you verify these credentials. It gives you more time. Notify your OSHA inspector that you need to gather your key employees. They will wait 30 to 60 minutes. If you have a safety director who maybe needs to get into town, they usually will wait. They're not going to wait more than 60 minutes normally. Depending on the person, sometimes they're going to say, I don't want to wait at all, or maybe they're going to go and come back. But what happens is you let them know that we have a team that handles our OSHA inspections. We need to gather those folks. Again, that buys some time for you. Get those folks in there, get them into a room, and start talking to them about what the OSHA guy is interested in looking at. Okay? That's a very short synopsis of what to do in the event of an OSHA inspection. We do have an Appendix E dealing with OSHA on that crisis management team. We also have more detailed information within our office that we can offer you on how to handle an OSHA inspection. Now, concluding here, post-crisis. Following any crisis, you want to go out and assess what went right and what you can fix. You will never have a crisis that you sit back and you think at the end of that crisis, man, that was perfect. You'll have stuff that'll screw up, we'll make mistakes here, we'll find weaknesses here. You'll want to shore those things up. It's very important to go through that crisis. How did we handle it? How do we handle it better next time? It is not criticism. This is the way of the world. It's tough to handle a crisis perfect. You can't. You're going to make mistakes. So go through that program, figure out where you got to shore things up, and then go through and make those adjustments as you need. Okay. Other items you want to consider: monitor your news and conversations. Okay. During a crisis, be aware of what's being said about your organization. Have somebody on the news. Have somebody who's tracking the media, if in fact the media is involved. Have somebody track what your employees are talking about. Get a feel for what the overall consensus is about what's going on with that crisis within your organization. There's another piece in here. It's called goodwill. Developing a goodwill bank. And what that really is, it's kind of it's a unique thing. And when people deal with a crisis, what helps them get through a crisis positively is how the general public perceives that company. And many times that perception is developed long before a crisis happens. If you're a company that supports the community, gets involved in things, is a good employer, and shows goodwill within the community. Now, ironically enough, that plays dividends for you if you have a crisis. If you're a organization that doesn't have those types of attributes, and maybe you're not well thought of in the area because you have a manufacturing operation and it's loud, or there's dust, or whatever the case may be, when the crisis happens, I guarantee you media is going to talk to your neighbors, and sometimes their perception may not be what you want it to be. So having goodwill and trying to be established as a community caring company is the best of your abilities is a valuable lesson to have. So to conclude, managing a crisis is difficult, and without a plan, you're next to impossible to be able to do. Again, the following points should always be present: run a clean and ethical business, identify your potential internal and external threats, and can correct them if possible. Develop a quality crisis management plan before it's needed. And again, before it's needed. Get that crisis management team put into place. Get those things in order. Annually reassess and update your plan, even if you don't have a crisis. All right, even if you don't have to go through it, once a year, get that team together, take a look at your written policy plan. Have things changed? Have you added new entities to your company? Maybe you got a new location. Maybe we have a new division within our organization. How are we going to address those type of things? Take a look at your industrial trends, and that's very important. What's going on in your industry? What kind of incidents are they having? You're susceptible to the same things. Have a very clear and distinct news media policy, and again, finally, as we just discussed, maintain a goodwill bank. Those are all the basic elements of what should be in play. Again, this is a very complicated, let me take that back. This is a very lengthy process, okay? And we can't cover everything. It's not complicated. It just needs to be done in layers. as far as establishing a crisis management team. It can be done. That document that we have on the LMC website is a very valuable piece. If you need additional information, we are available to help you provide more materials and substance to that if needed. So with that, I'm going to open this up a little bit for questions, and if you have any questions, please type them to the right, and I'll do the best I can to answer those. You should have an area where you can type questions, I believe, and I'll open it up here. And I know you got to type, so I'm not seeing any here at the moment, but we'll give it a second. If somebody's in the process of typing, don't rush. Is agility recovery good to have? We have a question about that. Yes, it is. It's something you need to look at. Agility recovery. We have some resources that we use from them. We've had good success. We've had other clients, I think, that have had good success. But they're pretty good. They're a pretty good company. I can't give you anything directly stating my personal experience with them. I met with them. I know their resources. I know their materials. They have pretty good stuff. Okay, hold on a second here. Will these slides be available? Yes, they will. I will make them available to you. If you want a copy of the presentation of the slides, simply email me. I'm going to give you that right now so you can write it down as I'm answering some of these questions. Well, I don't have my email address on there, but let me give it to you. My email address is chuck.martinek, that's MARTINEK, at lmcins.com. That's chuck.martinek, MARTINEK, at lmcins.com. Okay. Can we share the website again? Where can we access various documents? On the last slide here, if you see the www.lmcins.com/risk management, that will get it to you. If you just go to www.lmcins.com, you'll see a tab that says risk management. Click on that, and then you'll have you'll see where the crisis management material is available. So, all right, those are all the questions we have for right now. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your attentiveness. And again, if you need any additional information, please contact us or go onto our website, and you should be able to pull this material from there. Thank you, and have a great day.